Matthew.
Okay, sure. Thanks a lot. Matthew Lee, Inner City Press, on behalf of the Free UN Coalition for Access. Thanks for doing this briefing, which I know you guys always do. I wanted to ask about a controversy here in the U.S., which is whether the Obama administration will follow the Bush administration's interpretation that the torture treaty does not apply to CIA facilities and military prisons outside of the United States. So I wanted to know of your view of whether these obligations apply to states, wherever they may be, or only within their own borders, and sort of any guidance you can give. And Mr. Mendez, I wanted to ask, you'd mentioned blocked visits, and when you were here before, you mentioned Bahrain was one of them. Has there been any progress on getting into Bahrain? And has anyone raised to you the death reportedly by torture in Western Sahara prison of Hassan al-Wali, which took place recently? Thank you.
Let me answer that first part, because I think the news story about the U.S. position on the extraterritoriality of the obligations under the convention is in the context of its upcoming review before the committee. So I'm going to let Professor Grossman deal with that one. In the case of Bahrain, I continue to insist on being invited. Last March, I met with a foreign minister in Geneva. And I asked him for a new date. His government has yet to respond on that. Of course, I continue to insist, but I have not received an invitation. And just as a reminder, I was twice invited and twice canceled at the last minute by Bahrain. There have been other cancellations, unfortunately, as well. Thailand canceled, although I was reminded again today that they are willing to set up another date, which we are negotiating for next year. Guatemala canceled and has not given me a new date. Unfortunately, I got an invitation to Guantanamo that I couldn't accept because the terms were not acceptable. And I'm insisting on being invited to Guantanamo. And at the same time, I'm negotiating visiting prisons in the mainland, in federal and state prisons, particularly to look at solitary confinement. And that's pending. I'm sorry to say that it's been pending quite a long time now, but it is. But the negotiations are ongoing, so I wouldn't want to qualify that level of cooperation. With respect to the death in custody of this person from Western Sahara, yes, I did receive information and a formal request for action on that, and I have written to the government of Morocco, but this has been so recent that, of course, all I can say is that I'm working on it, but I can't disclose anything else about because it is at this level of confidentiality at this stage, at least. There was another case? No.
No, that was it. Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you.
Appreciate it.
Two comments on your question. First of all, in November, the Committee Against Torture will have the interactive dialogue with the United States. So, concerning the United States, Ukraine, Venezuela, different countries that are on November, I will not comment specifically on issues involving them because the committee will do it. But now, not asking now specifically about that, the issue of extraterritorial application, and again, not commenting on a country, but what is the way in which the committee has interpreted that provision. The committee has always said that if you are subject to if an act is subject to a jurisdiction, meaning the following, you have the powers to influence. That it doesn't excuse you from the obligations of the convention. So, I don't want to bother you with technicalities, but I will tell you two. In human rights law, and this is the bread and butter of human rights law, this is not something in the margin, this is the core of human rights law. When there are two interpretations, you always choose the interpretation that favors alleged victims. And this is settled, like in the International Court of Justice, is settled by the regional courts and so on and so on. Because the purpose of these human rights treaties is humanitarian. Second thing, we saw in the past sometimes attempts to say, for example, bad people, terrorists, they forfeit their right of communication. They cannot communicate. They could be in secret detention facilities and so forth. There is no vacuum there. There is not a vacuum. We have said that there is no. We don't need to find here what we call in Spanish resquicio legal, a way to do things that are prohibited by the convention. All human beings are protected. We also have said that victims do not include only the individual, and that would be enough, but also the family members or dependents in many reasons. The Inter-American Court, for example, has determined the children of disappeared persons. I mean, if they don't know about their fathers or mothers, I mean, that they are placed in a situation where they're suffering inhuman treatment, for example. And it could be some, and again, our general comment number 3 cleared these points. So again, I reiterate, I am not making a comment on any specific country, and then I don't want to be decontextualized on this because the committee will comment in November and so forth. But if somebody asks me, for lack of a better word, what is the jurisprudence on the committee on this thing, I'm giving this answer devoid of a context and what's going on in certain, I mean, in a given country. So that's my answer, and thank you for your question.